minutes, you could prep me on what you want me to say for that, because I haven't. And you can tell us when we're ready. Oh. And then okay. All right. Well, we're almost live. We'll give people a few minutes to hop on and join us, and then we'll get going.
All right. You find it okay? You find it like easy?
Yeah.
No trouble. Good. Okay.
Easy. I was lost to text it.
All right, and Always Learning is live in 5, 4, 3.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone. This is Janine Yancey. I'm the founder and CEO of Emtrain. Thank you for joining us to our LinkedIn Live discussion. I'm here with Steve Cadigan. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Janine.
Good
to be here.
So for those of you who don't know Steve is the principal of Cadigan Talent Ventures, where he helps businesses figure out their strategies to optimize their talent and their workforce to build high-performing organizations. Before that, he was the VP of Talent at LinkedIn, joined when they were 400 and grew them to 4,000 people. So a lot of exciting things happened, I'm sure, during your tenure. I'm excited to chat with you, Steve, today about the future of work and the future of the employee experience.
Great. Well, Janine, the last probably 5 or 6 years, this has been the dedication of my life, looking into the future of work, future of careers, future of jobs, future of leadership. We're in such an incredibly dynamic time right now, and I find the subject so interesting.
And you're writing a book, are you not?
I am writing a book.
Okay.
I'm hoping it's going to come out in the beginning of next year.
Awesome. Okay, so if anyone has any ideas or questions, please message us on the LinkedIn Live channel so that Steve could hear it and maybe integrate it in some of the topics in the book. So I want to start us off this morning, if I can, with you just kind of outlining some of your common or your core principles, if you will, for HR business leaders, like what your philosophy is.
Sure, Janine. So having worked in the HR field for about 30 years, I had a chance to work in Canada, the US, also in Singapore, and in about 5 or 6 different industries. And I think after probably about 7 or 8 years working in HR, I finally developed the bones of my HR philosophy and my approach to HR. And I encourage everyone, wherever you are in your journey, you really need to think about where you're putting your stock in terms of the function, because there is no one right way to do human resources. There's many different ways and many styles and approaches to human resources. My personal style, I think, was influenced by lots of different organizations and leaders, but I really believe human resources is in the building trust business.
Mm-hmm.
HR is about judgment, and it's about building credibility, and that the leadership team owns the human resources agenda, but that the HR team is really there to help, push it. It's help to, set a high bar in terms of what it can be and what it could be. And I think the best run companies that I've been a part of were ones where the leadership team jointly owned the HR agenda. And it wasn't like, hey, HR, you own the culture, or you own the compensation, or you own performance management. It's, hey, we own it. Can you help us get better?
Yeah, right? So that makes perfect sense to me as compared to what you're not saying. So I'll just put it out there. HR is more of a tactical function and operational function. So I think, what I'm hearing from you is it has to start with kind of a broad view and a very strategic function.
That's right. And the thing that I've loved about human resources as a function is that, is also something that frustrates me. There is no actual accreditation process that says if you do this, you are a perfect HR leader. And there, like I said earlier, there is no right, perfect model. It really, a lot of times comes down to your fit with the leadership team. And do you guys see the world in a similar way? And it does take time to evolve. But if you really, I think, want to be delivering value in an organization, the question I love to ask when I'm talking to people about human resources is, how do you create value in any organization in the world? You create value through the people.
Yeah, okay.
And so the next question I usually have is, if you create value through people, that should be the number one area of your time, investment, and your attention. Why in every organization, most every organization in the world, are the worst systems the people systems? Why is the talent agenda the last thing in every board meeting, every management meeting, every committee meeting?
Yeah.
Why is it the last thing that we talk about when it's the number one driver of how we create value?
It's kind of the foundation of how you create value.
That's right. And every organization will say, oh yeah, people are number one. People are the most important thing here. But if you look at how they spend their time,
Right.
how they arrange their calendar, how they arrange the meetings and company meetings and what they're talking about, it's usually around, here's the sales strategy, here's the financial numbers, here's the new product introduction,
Right.
here's the engineering roadmap. Rarely is it about talent. And I don't blame leaders for that. I just don't think there's a lot of great models for how an HR agenda can really drive a business to great things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for example, I was sitting at LinkedIn about 10 years ago, and every one of my executive leaders knew more what they didn't want from human resources than what they did want.
Oh, okay.
And I said, and by the way, if any of you are ever considering going somewhere else in a different organization, the first thing that I would encourage you to do is find out where your executives at this potential company you're thinking of joining, where have they worked? Because you can understand their footprint that they've seen of a human resources function.
Right.
And that's really healthy to understand, is what they may think is valued. So I had Google refugees, I had Adobe refugees, Cisco refugees, Yahoo refugees, and they had all had mixed, experiences, right, with their HR agenda.
I want us to talk a little bit about employee engagement platforms, because as you talk about, it's all about the talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
What comes to my mind is, okay, so why is there this myriad of employee engagement platforms out today? And what's going on? Is this just a fad, or what's going on with the workforce that everyone's feeling the need to have this employee engagement solution?
Yeah, it's a great topic. And I tell you what, if we look at the number of new startups in the space going after listening to employees, employee surveys, understanding the pulse of what's going on, you're seeing an explosion of new companies and new solution offerings in that space. But I think what's driving this in part is the fact that the one global organization that measures engagement, Gallup,
Yeah.
and they've been doing that in the United States and publishing it since the year 2000. They recently published the statistics for the United States, and they found that 70% of the workforce is disengaged, and that means only 30 are engaged. And of the 70, 16% are actively disengaged, and that number's growing. So while we're at an all-time high, 30% people are engaged, which I would argue is a crisis. It's a big, big problem. The number of people who are really actively disengaged is growing.
So what do you see as some of the dynamics? I know I have my thoughts, but I want to kind of get you to flesh out some of the things that you're thinking about.
Yeah, I think there's never one cause for this. I think there's a number of drivers, but I think probably the biggest one is that the future today, from a career and a job point of view, has never been more uncertain, both for professionals and for companies. Companies can't predict what skills they need 5 to 10 years from now with a great deal of clarity.
Right.
In fact, most companies don't have a 10-year plan. Most companies at most have a 5-year plan. Now that didn't used to be the case. Similarly, professionals, if companies don't know what skills they need, professionals can't, and professionals don't know what skills they need to build, and companies are not telling universities what skills they need help developing.
Right.
So we have a system that's a little bit stuck. I think it's a little bit in paralysis. And when I look at another big driver of what's happening in the workforce today, the number of people leaving a company, the amount of people leaving a company is going up in terms of how fast they're leaving.
Right.
So for example, in the demographic of 25 to 35-year-olds, the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US is saying right now, the average length of time people are staying in a job in the 25 to 35-year-old range is 2.8 years. And I would argue in Silicon Valley, I mean, just my gut says
it's
that's
less.
less.
Yeah, it's probably less than that.
Bring that number down.
Yeah. So I want to point out some of the things. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think I want to add to that some of the dynamics that I focus on, given our perspective of the tricky culture issues of, ethics and harassment and such, which is, I think that we've gotten to a place where we have such upheaval of social norms, right, going on, because you've just got different generations all in the same workforce, and we're trying to figure out what the new kind of benchmark is of social norms. And we also, at the same time, we're going through a rapid change of our economy where, as you point out, we've got automation and machines that are going to be taking over a vast number of the tasks and maybe jobs that exist today. And what comes to my mind is the last time we experienced this kind of upheaval at this scale was the Industrial Revolution, which the Gilded Age, right? Where you had companies and you had leadership that were so polarized from the vast majority of the workforce that you had tension and they were not aligned. And then in that era, it turned to, major conflict. And we're not here yet, but maybe what we're seeing is the advanced kind of indicator, which is disengagement, or people not engaged because they feel like, okay, the leadership of these businesses are on a different level than we're at. There's all this uncertainty. Our jobs are going away. No one's in it for us as an individual contributor.
That's right. That's right. And I could add about a dozen things on top of what you're saying, which is we have a growing gig economy, which is a growing number of independent workers. I think every large organization is using a greater number of short-term labor more than ever before. And by the way, the Bureau of Labor Statistics isn't doing a great job at measuring that because it's hard.
Right.
Some of that's cash-based. Some of that is, W-9 and W-2. So, we have that growing. And then the workforce is seeing big companies like GE, which every business book in the 90s and early 2000s was all about GE, great leadership. They've lost more market cap than any company in history in a 20-year time horizon. They've lost $800 billion of value. So there was a company that was a sure bet. Right. And now there's no sure bets. Right. I was at a conference a few weeks ago with 300 CEOs, and I asked them, how many of you promise your people at least a 5-year runway with their career in your company? And they're like,
probably no one does.
And I say, so why are you complaining that people are leaving when you're not making a commitment? Right. What commitment should you expect from them? So we have a really, a fast changing, call it relationship between employer and employee. Yeah. And I don't think either party really wanted this, but here we are.
Here we are.
And I think you're right. I think there's growing tensions. We just saw that in San Francisco, some of the gig economy companies, like was it Lyft and Uber and DoorDash, lobbying for the creation of a new definition of a hybrid employee, something between a contractor and a full-time employee. And I think a lot of that fight is really not about that. The fight's really about how our medical insurance is structured in the United States and how the cost, if you're independent, is so difficult that it's putting pressure on the fact that people can't access to proper health care and at affordable levels.
Yeah.
But that you add that into the mix, and we have a really messy formula.
Well, and then on the other side, so you've got lobbyists from some of the large tech brands that are lobbying for new laws to fit their business needs, right? And then on the other side of the equation, you've got employees filing change.org petitions, calling out some of the practices that they don't think are right or are ethical. I mean, I think we're living in exciting times. I mean, it's interesting what's going on.
And that last point that you mentioned, employees filing a change.org petition, I mean, and the employee has more power today. And this is part of the other riddle that has just fascinated me with where we are with this employer-employee dynamic. You can make a very strong argument that employees have more power today than they've ever had. I can see more choice. I can see more opportunity. I can decide to go to make a job change faster than ever without the stigma. And I have my mobile phone where I can call out my employer on Glassdoor.
Okay, so I hear all that, and I agree to a certain extent, but I also disagree because even with all that, the rules of engagement have changed. I mean, we're going from take a job with us and we'll develop you and we'll supply a career path for you. And now it's like, take a job for us, and that's great that you're going to help us get to our goals. And I mean, there's not really that two-way exchange.
And I don't disagree. I'm just sort of trying to, excite the audience with some sort of compelling ideas. But you can make an argument that employees, in some degree, and probably knowledge workers are the category that I'm thinking
have options.
Living in Silicon Valley, when I hear employee, I think software engineer. Yeah. And that's just a small segment. But the interesting thing is, while we also have all that choice, we also have the most unhappy workforce we've ever had, the most disengaged, the most disloyal. Yeah. And what's happened is that career promise hasn't been replaced with anything.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is your path. And it's usually linear, and you work a few years, you get promoted, work a few years, get promoted, change jobs, boom. That has not been replaced with a model that has made sense for people. And there's an interesting YouTube out there by this guy, John Seeley Brown, who's the former CTO and CEO of Xerox. And as you may know, in its day was cooler than Apple and Google and Facebook combined. And what he's done the last 5 years of his life, the last 10 years, is dedicate himself to looking at education. And he says, and this is another element to this whole conversation, the length of value of a skill that you have today is about 5 to 10 years, and it used to be about 50.
Right.
And that gets us into, I think, what would be interesting for us to talk about is, so in an era where the future's uncertain, where you can't make any promises, where the value of a skill has a shorter shelf life than at any point in history, what do you do as a company?
So as a company and as an employee or as an individual, you can never rest on your laurels. I mean, you constantly have to be reinventing yourself.
That's true. That's true. And so that's where I think, and this is part of why I feel compelled to write a book about this, is I think what companies need to, okay, let's step back for a second. If we look at all the unicorns that are out there in the world today, I would argue that 95% of them are not in the business they set out to be when they started. LinkedIn wasn't going to be in the recruiting business. It's in the recruiting business. Facebook, I don't think, was going to be in the advertising business. They're in it, right? And so if you look at all the Airbnb, maybe the only one that's like, yeah, let's rent rooms in a house, okay? Okay, fantastic. But most of them haven't. So their value came from their ability to change and try new things
and pivot
and learn and pivot. And I think what's fascinating, if you look at all the unicorns and the average length of time of service for those employees in those companies, almost all of them are under a year. So how do you create all that value when everyone just got there? And they're creating a lot of value. So maybe there's a lot of value with new ideas coming in. Maybe a fluid workforce delivers greater value. Profits in America have never been higher. So you can't say trying to keep people for a long period of time
is productive. And that's
maybe the aspiration that we think it is, right? And so that's why I talk to leaders all the time, and they say, well, people are leaving. I said, why is that bad? Because we should be retaining them. Of course, you should be retaining some of your stars, and it hurts to lose them. But maybe new ideas, new ways of solving problems, people from different industries is bringing muscle in that you've undervalued.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Okay, so yes, I do. So I think we have a question from folks watching. Let's define engagement, shall we?
Okay. Well, there's lots of different levels of definitions of engagement. And I also think that like culture, there's probably, I don't know that we could all arrive at one definition of culture.
Well, I'll do my definition.
Okay.
Culture is the product of the result of how we interact with each other. Okay. That's the most broad terms.
Fair. That's fair. I would say engagement as measured by Gallup and a lot of organizations that try to measure engagement is people are there willingly. They're excited to be there. They feel trusted. They feel they have a friend. They feel they make a difference. They understand how the business works. I'm there with purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm intentional about my presence at work. That's, I think,
I love
what the ideal engaged worker is. And look at this. We've got an economy where we've got the most profitable time in the history of American corporations with the most unengaged workforce we've ever had.
So they're just showing up. They're doing their job, but they don't really care. They don't really want to be there.
That's right. And just like earlier, I can be a little bit contentious and say, is engagement really worth fighting for? We're more profitable than we've ever been, and we have the most disengaged workforce. Maybe there's something else. Maybe rather than in measuring engagement, maybe we should be looking at some underlying issues there. And I would argue that in a world of high velocity change and uncertainty, we're humans. We don't like the unknown. And when the unknown is something that we fear the worst.
Right.
So I would think that organizations should be thinking about trust today more than engagement. Engagement's not something I would throw out of looking at, but maybe building a workforce of trust that, I can't promise you that you're going to have a job in 5 years, but I will promise you while you're here.
I'll do right by you.
That's right. I've got your back. I will grow you and develop you more than anywhere else. And if I can't promise you something here, I will help you get somewhere else.
Well, so I love that. And I would kind of focus a little bit on, let's focus on the trust, and let's focus on businesses being purposeful. And it's something other, and we're seeing this now, it's something other than just creating shareholder value, right? Shareholder profits. We're actually a mission-driven organization. And as part of that, we're building trust with our workforce.
Right.
And then that kind of yields or leads to hopefully engagement.
Right, and high performance.
And high
right?
performance.
I mean, one of the great debates that I like having, you and I've had this debate, is the happy workforce the ultimate objective for a human resources department? And my answer usually is, I don't think so. I think winning is the ultimate objective for a workforce. But it just so happens a happy workforce may be more likely to win than an unhappy workforce. But the goal is winning. It's not necessarily happy. You understand?
Yeah.
That there's a hierarchy here. And I think we've done engagement a disservice by thinking it's happy people. Because happy
people in a team that's not hitting its goals, that's not doing cool things, doesn't stay happy for very long.
Right.
If they care.
That's right. There's a really cool YouTube out there in the YouTube universe of Julia Hartz, who's the CEO of Eventbrite, talking about her struggles building culture at Eventbrite. And at first, as a first-time CEO, she's like, we're going to build a fun place. It's going to be great. We need to have these great foosball tables and picnics and tournaments and all these things and beer Fridays. And then she said she woke up one day and the company wasn't performing very well. And she said, I had a nightmare that we're the happiest, most mediocre company on the planet. And she goes, what I found out over time, it's wonderful. It's like 7-minute YouTube. What I found out over time is that my people were more motivated when we started winning. And performing well.
Yeah.
And that means hard decisions. That means difficult conversations. It doesn't always mean we have to make the employee happy, right? We have to be respectful
or comfortable.
That's right. And so there's that dynamic tension. And when I think about human resources, we've got to be in that conversation.
Yeah.
We've got to help push leaders. Oh, I'm really upset. We're losing all these people, and start pushing back with some hard questions. Is that really bad? Yeah. Did we lose the right people? Did we lose the wrong people? Did you try hard to keep those people? If you did, we're not making any promises to them. So why should they make promises to us? We need to have, I really think we're at the early stages of defining what a new career path looks like. And I'm trying to do that with, a lot of interactions I'm having with people like you and other leaders around the world. Like, what does a great career look like right now? Because we're fighting still to keep people a long time.
Right.
It's not working anywhere in the world. Every country I go to, whether it's South America, whether it's Mexico, Canada, Europe, people are leaving faster than ever before. Even in union-driven and works council countries, people are leaving faster than ever before. And leaders are just deer in the headlights.
Don't know how to do it. Okay, so you have a guideline that you look at from the Duke basketball coach.
That's right.
That is helpful for this kind of situation.
Right.
So what are they doing there that you think is applicable?
So I'm a huge sports fan, as you know, and I'm a huge college basketball fan. And one of the things that I'm trying to help leaders think through is there are other models that are growing, and college basketball is a great one. It used to be people would stay in a college basketball program for 4 years. And that's increasingly changed over time because of competitive pressures, because of financial pressures, because changing the rules. But if you look at Duke University, last year, going into the final tournament, they were the #1 ranked team in the country, and 3 of their star players were freshmen who were, after the season, were all drafted.
Oh, wow.
And if you look at what Coach Krzyzewski's done there, he had to build a world-class team in 3 months to compete in March Madness in 6 months. And he knew the expectation was they would leave. The star players that he brought in for his program were going to leave and go pro.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm okay with that. I'm going to make you better.
Okay.
Come join me. I'm going to make you better. I'm going to surround you with great people. I'm going to give you a great culture.
Yeah.
The alumni of our school have a great careers, great network. So whether you have a short career as a pro or a long one, you can go into broadcasting, you can go into coaching. And he said, I will grow you more than anywhere else you can go. And I think that's a great example of a model that I think corporations and people can argue. This is another great conversation. People can argue basketball college basketball is a bit of a corporation in a way. Yeah. So I think we need more and more of these models. Spotify is another one that's basically said, we don't want most of our employees to be in the same job more than 2 years.
Oh.
We want people to move.
Because, so that's an option. Instead of transitioning out of the organization, you're just transitioning around the organization.
Right. Now, we've always known rotations are a good thing in business because you build peripheral vision, you build relationships of trust.
Yeah.
But what I love about what Spotify's done is they've created the ultimate insurance policy in a high turnover world. Oh. If people don't change jobs and someone leaves, you've got a single point of failure.
Right.
If people do change jobs and someone leaves,
you could always have somebody jump in.
A mesh of support. And I think what people want today, more than a job guarantee, is they want knowledge guarantee.
Yeah.
I want to know that whatever I'm doing, however long I'm here, I'm going to be better.
I'll learn something from this.
That's right.
So we have another good question from folks watching, and then I want to answer that, and I want us to kind of wrap it up a little bit, just a tight kind of.
Come on, I've got 3 hours, Janine.
Let's
go.
So the question is, does trust look different to different generations? Which I think is a great question.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Does trust look? I absolutely think trust looks different. Just like
I mean, it kind of makes sense. You grow up with different experiences, different expectations.
Right.
Your
and I think
view
let's
of trust.
unpack that, because I think, and this is what we all do in HR. I hear the question, but there's a question behind the question.
Yeah.
And I think that is, do I trust leaders? Do I trust management? Do I trust the corporation? And I think traditionally, there was a high expectation that yes, I do. And I give them respect and don't challenge it. Today, because of social media, because of the norms that we're building, I think everyone's got to be a lot more transparent. So I think we have a lot more information. And if companies are not as transparent as another company is, that's going to be a problem for them. Because people are like, hey, I can get this food right away. I can get my groceries right away. I can get information right away. I want to know, why did we make that decision? Why are we changing our business approach? Or why are we closing that office? Or why are we buying that company? And so I think the challenge is on leaders to have to be far more communicative, far more transparent. And so it's a different, having that trust conversation in a corporation is far more challenging today than it used to be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think so. And I think it's a matter of a shared language. So it's the over communicating to say, here's what we're committing. Here's the values that we will commit to adhering to.
Mm-hmm.
So that the trust, gets to be like, okay, I understand where you stand. I understand what I can expect.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that people are not having different ideas of what trust means. Right. So it's at least everyone's on the same page of, this is what it means to me, and here's what I'm going to do to establish it.
I agree, Gene. And you see this all the time at Emtrain with the treasure trove of data and feedback that you're able to collect from the products that you have, collecting feedback and voices from employees around, what their view is of culture. Do they feel their voice is heard? Do they feel that this is a high integrity environment? And I think it's far more challenging for leaders to build the trust. But I also think leaders are investing a lot more time and recognizing in increasing levels that they have to build trust today. Because people can see if the culture is poisonous, it's out there. You can't hide that stuff. In the old days, you could spin your story to the employees.
Right. It would be all opaque, and then it's your narrative.
That's right.
You can't control the narrative anymore.
That's right. And another interesting org trend that I think is seen, and then I'll let you wrap up, is the public relations department always used to sit under marketing. In most technology organizations today, public relations sits right under the CEO.
Oh.
Corporate communications, employee communications, that stuff is critical today. And it's not I tell people today, if you're doing an annual employee survey, you are not listening to your employees.
No.
It's got to be more frequent. It's got to be more fluid.
Well, it's got to be an ongoing dialogue, ongoing discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So feel free to jump in. But how I would sum this up, our discussion here is, we're in a time of rapid change, rapid social, rapid economic change, and not kind of reacting to that and addressing it is a lost opportunity, really. And really what we should be doing, or thinking about at least as HR leaders, is how do we get ahead of this? How do we set up an environment so that we are building trust with employees who come into the organization? We are very, in a focused, deliberate way, thinking about what am I doing for this employee? What am I doing for this person? What knowledge am I going to help this person learn? What skills am I going to help this person learn? How am I going to let this person be better off tomorrow than they are today by being associated with this brand, with this organization? And that's a constant dynamic, really.
So 100% agree. And I think if I were to be asked, what is the best investment of time for a human resources function and organization right now, it is to make sure that you have a trust agenda, that you have a growth agenda. The companies that are going to win are going to be the ones that can learn and grow and change faster than their competitors. The employees that are going to win are the ones that can grow and learn and change faster than the peers they're competing for jobs for.
Yeah.
So both parties are striving for the same thing. And I'm hopeful that's going to produce some kind of model that people are going to feel more comfortable with, because we just don't have it yet. But doing the way it's always been done is a recipe for disaster, I think, right now.
Yeah.
We need a different model.
We're evolving. We're getting there.
Exactly.
So if you have questions, please submit them. Happy to answer, post discussion. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Please remember to follow us on LinkedIn so that you get alerted to the other discussions. Steve, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Janine.
All right, great.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right, great.
All right.
That was awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Do we have pretty good retention?
Yeah, we got some good engagement, I think.
Did we get any like little hearts or the little?
Yeah.